Hi everybody, the Mature Simmer here, or should I say ciao. Welcome here to Italy, specifically Tuscany. So I've decided to make the change and move from jolly old England, from Riverview, where we did have a lot of fun, to come to an area that I felt would really be able to use my expertise in VIP orders and just trying to focus on production, and also offer me a pretty good challenge. Let me explain a bit of the general rules that I've got, at least as my initial thoughts here. Autoload and super strength are going to be used where things can be done to speed things up, where it makes sense. A lot of that'll happen, especially anything super strength wise, off camera. Automation is allowed, which specifically is the same thing as we had in the first series: course play, auto drive, I suppose you could say auto load, the automatic irrigation, things like that. But there are some changes made, and basically grass work specifically is all off. So there's no grass specific straw and hay or grass itself, and no silage will be asked for by the VIPs and so forth. And I'll explain a little bit more of that in a moment. We've also got precision farming on, and the typical no nuisance type things, or things that I consider a nuisance with a series like this. We're not going to be doing rocks, we won't have to plow, no weeds, and as always, if we suddenly decide a mod might help, that's certainly acceptable. So for those who might be new, what is the VIP series? What are we doing here? I had mentioned when I started it the first time on Riverview that this was a bit of an experiment, but in the time that I spent on Riverview, I came to really love the mod, and from a single player perspective said I was unlikely to play without it, unless I was doing something that really wasn't just farming and trying to make my way in the world. So the other difference we've got here, because of the fact that we came from Riverview with a good amount of money, is the economy level is set to hard, where I believe I may have had it on normal, but I actually probably had it on easy in Riverview, which is part of why I think we were able to accumulate the funds at the rate we were able to. So we should still be able to make money here, but it shouldn't be insane. So the map that we're on is Hills of Tuscany by Johnny X Pro. Part of the thing that attracted me to this map, and I will say I spent a long time looking for a map. There's a lot of big maps out there. Obviously, unless I'm doing a mega VIP type thing, which I know is going to be incredibly time consuming. And so far I've only dabbled in that a little bit. Typically I'm looking for more standard size maps, but certainly not 4x maps or anything beyond that. So this, I think, is actually a 2x map. There really weren't any good quality 1x maps that were very similar to what I already did, meaning they were in England, in very tight fields and so forth, and they didn't lend to what I was hoping to be able to do to expand the complexity of the series here. So that is how we ended up here on Hills of Tuscany. One of the things that I was looking for were new crop types. So this map has white grapes along with regular grapes, and it also has spelt, meal, alfalfa, triticale as new crops as well. And it also has some more complex productions that we may or may not run into depending on what the VIPs are looking for. So I'll kind of explain them as we hit them, but there are some productions, such as a compost and a fertilizer factory. There's some things with, I guess I would call it a plant nursery, and so forth. Now another big change here is I've made the decision that base product that is used in the more complex production schemes we're going to be looking at here for the VIPs is not going to be asked for raw sale. So what that means is we're not going to see orders 4 grapes, 4 olives, 4 cotton, beets, honey, wool, or wood. All of those are off in this series because I'm going to need to produce those things in all likelihood, probably in vast quantities, but I don't need to ask to sell them. I was also debating greenhouses as far as the strawberry lettuce and so forth, because if you remember in Riverview, especially toward the end, we were just waiting and letting months or years pass to wait for the greenhouse. There's modified greenhouses here that are more complex in growing products, but they're also considered very large greenhouses. So for those base game products, I've decided to leave them on and to use an auto load pallet trailer, which I'm hoping will make things simpler. It's got a lot bigger quantity. It can take 50,000 liters, so I don't have to move 18,000 liters at a time. So I'm hoping all those trade-offs are going to make things more manageable. If you download this map yourself, some of the changes that I've made for the series and what I'm looking to do, I've taken pigs off the starting farm. Not going to be doing that because the only thing available for that is to just basically grow and sell pigs, and the VIPs don't ask for animals. So we're not going to go ahead and do that. I think there is an updated mod in the VIP series that does do that, but there's enough fun here, I think, without introducing any of that, and pigs are challenging because of the amount of food products they need. We're also not doing manure or slurry specifically unless they're needed by a production such as compost. So I do have things on the farm that allow me to do that if I need to. I went ahead and added the TMR mixer that I had discovered in Riverview, the larger one, because I know we're going to need cows because we're going to need to produce milk for productions and things like that. We've got our handy dandy case seeder. You can see it kind of tucked away. The back planter's over there. I'm pointing at it with the circle. Hopefully you can see it. And then the seed bin that goes in front of it is over there. And then there's just a lot of other implements that I'm not going to use that I sold off ahead of time. So what have I added in addition to that? I'm going ahead this time and playing with the Platinum expansion. That's not to be confused with the Premium expansion that's coming out in a few months. Maybe the next VIP series will look at that, but I've never used the Platinum expansion, but it introduces a boatload of productions and a boatload of products, and that was one of the challenges of finding a map that just was expansive enough and had enough empty space that I could use as a palette if I needed to suddenly add 5 or 6 Platinum productions that the VIPs were going to need. But because of the fact that I'm coming from Riverview with so much money, I wanted to give myself the challenge of something that may require me to buy a lot of land, may require me to buy a lot of productions. And then I also added a potato processing mod that was released since I was playing VIP before that also added a lot of things to do with potatoes. So we will be growing potatoes on this farm. How much remains to be seen. It's going to depend on what the VIPs ask for. And the last bit of housekeeping is things I've done to the VIP mod to tweak things. So I mentioned, if you were interested in the Mega VIP stuff, that I had done substantial testing, actually code changes in that case, because the modder had said this was really set for smaller maps. And so I didn't feel I needed to do code changes, but what I did play with were the settings that drive how the VIP order manager works. So the first thing I did is I got rid of the ramp up that happens in the first 3 levels by default in the mod, where basically you're just asked for very few things in the beginning. I felt, again, because I arrived here in Italy with substantial funds, that if I suddenly had to buy 10 fields, hopefully I have enough money to do that, and hey, let's go with the challenge. The other thing I have done is I'm only looking ahead, or I'm only showing 2 levels at a time. So we're going to see this level and the next level only, as opposed to the 4-level view, which is the default for the mod that I had in the previous series. Again, 2 reasons for that. One is, if I have to do field expansion, the mod takes that into account in determining what future orders are. If I've already generated several levels of orders, any fields I buy aren't going to have an impact until the next level is generated, which means we could be going 5, 10, 15 episodes before we see the impact of any need to buy fields in the beginning. And secondly, because I've also increased slightly the quantity of orders that it can generate, I've taken the max level from 4 to 5, and I've done a lot of testing to try things. I went all the way up to 10, for example. That was far too much. I was almost going to settle on 6, but I decided to split the difference and just crank it up one little bit. And I think that will work. It's all random and it's all chance. I've gone ahead and run the mod 40 levels out just to see what it creates, and sometimes it creates something that might be less entertaining, and sometimes it creates things that are incredibly entertaining, and I'd say the level of 5 kind of seemed to default to give me enough variety potential that I think we're going to be in good shape. So that's enough of an introduction of what we're doing here. I do apologize. I know it probably took a little bit of time, but I think it was important to set the stage of what was going on here. And kind of jumping back into the semi-role play that I do here. Again, initially, I started on Riverview Farms, never having been a farmer. I was talking to my uncle as I was coming out of school, saying, hey, not sure what I'm going to do, but I'm thinking about maybe getting into farming. And he said, hey, I've got this farm in England. You want to take it over for me? And I did. And had a wonderful time and decided this is what I want to do. So now that I've finished with the challenge in Riverview, I'm here in Tuscany to continue, but on a much grander scale because of the amount that I was able to get. So the purchase price of this farm was not inexpensive. It was 3 million euros. And again, we're not in pounds anymore. Now we're in Italy, so we're in the land of the euro. So if you remember, we ended with 8,404,322 pounds. Again, we spent 3 million euros. We're not going to get super realistic and worry about what the real exchange rate may or may not have been between pounds and euros. It's 1 for 1 here. So I spent 3 million down, which would have gotten me to 5.4 million. But then I did go ahead and purchase some equipment. So as I said, I kind of swapped things out, sold some things off, and then the biggest additions are I've got a truck this time. It may be something I'm going to curse about, but initially with what I saw, I could not find a way to automate the water going to the animals, for example, and I really don't want to be carting a 8,000 liter tank of water. So that is a 32,000 liter tanker. That is our auto load pallet crone trailer that also is compatible with the Platinum expansion. So it should be able to pick up all the pallets for that so that I don't have to waste tons of time loading pallets. We've got the case items as I talked about, but we've got a little bit of a cultivator if we ever need that. There are some implements, like this one I kept. I'm not sure we're ever going to use it. This is our spreader for lime and fertilizer. It's a small capacity breed all. We'll see how that works. Fields aren't incredibly large here, so I'm thinking that would work. This was the harvester that they sold me with the farm. So it's a Deutz Fahr. I think it's got about a 8,500 liter capacity. That's a 6 meter standard header. And then we've got some baling equipment. So we've got a round baler, and this is a 24 bale loader. So I think that'll work great. So you may be wondering, since I turned off grass, like, well, what are you going to bale? Alfalfa is grass, and since it's a multi-fruit that's extended on this farm, I decided, let's leave that, and we can do hay and straw and just base alfalfa. That'll depend, again, on what we're asked to order. So here's one of our tractors. So it's a Massey Ferguson. It just says AL. I can't really read it. Obviously, it's got a front loader with a bucket, so that if we need to move anything, we've got that. But it's pretty small, and you can see we bought the farm as is. Equipment's pretty beat up. I'm gonna have to go ahead and clean things up. But here on the north end, you know, that's kind of what we've got here. So this is our cow barn. If we need to, we're going to get some cows in there. There's the slurry tank if we need it. There was a manure heap over here. Remove that, because I don't know that there's any reason we're going to need manure. This is a pallet store. Not use this particular thing, so I'm going to take a look at that. Up here is the only field we actually own with the farm right now. So you can see it's loam. It's entirely loam, which is great. So, and you can see it's 2.6 acres. Potential harvest quantity of this sorghum is 11,000 liters. So like I said, not really big fields here. Here, we've got a little bit of a chicken pasture. So if we need eggs and stuff, this is where we're going to be getting them. So we'll see what we need there. This is our really, really loved and used silo. I like the fact that it's got this big pad. At least in theory I like it. I've obviously not used it yet, but it looks like I've got plenty of room to kind of line up, back up, come in there. You know, if I'm using, I still don't know what I'll be using to move crops. They gave me some really small equipment. Got a fermenting silo here. Again, this is where the pigsty was, so I put the fermenting silo in case we need stuff for TMR. There's the TMR mixer that I mentioned, and then just basically moved this this store over here if we're going to store anything. But we've got that multi-fruit buying station that we had the local co-op put in for us because we said, you know, we think we're going to grow pretty big here, and so we don't want to be running to the store and carting stuff over. So I definitely was debating the kind of setup I wanted. And here is a sheep pasture. So again, we're not going to sell wool directly, but if we need fabric or we need cotton, or I'm sorry, if we need fabric or we need clothes, which is something that the VIPs could ask for, we're ready to go. But again, we'll use those things as we need to. There's a little BGA here on the farm, so that is what we just walked by down the hill. So it's a tiny little, I think 50 watt, 50 kilowatt, megawatt, whatever those are sized at. Again, never used it, not sure. We'll see if we ever do. And then this just looks like a storage place with some shelves, but it's not a specific pallet store. And then this is kind of the south end of our holding. So again, some more room for equipment, plenty of room here. So we've got just a few things tucked away here. We've got another few tractors. So there's a couple decent sized ones here. This is one of our medium tractors. Everything else here is small tractors right now. We've got more equipment. I'm not quite sure what the farmer was doing, but I'll explain it in a second. And then this is right now our crop trailer. It only moves 8,000 liters though, but for a field that only is going to give me 11,000, might be okay. So we'll see. And then we've got the diesel fuel tank, and then more importantly over here we've got a workshop on the farm. So should be able to repair equipment as we need to. Again, the fuel tank right there is great, and we've got a pressure washer here, so any kind of vehicle maintenance down here at the south end of the shop. But you guys, if you've watched the channel at all, you know I love the mountains. So that was a big draw for coming here as well. And again, we've got some more Oh no, this is, never mind. I was going to say some more storage, but this, I mean, in theory it's storage, but this is the part of the sheep enclosure. So we'll see if we get to use that or not. But that is the immediate farm. But when I said I'm not sure what the farmer is doing, let me show you the map and explain. So here is the hills of Tuscany. A lot of potential options. We are up here. The farm owned a lot of kind of random plots of land around that really aren't productive. If I wanted to, I suppose I could sell them and, you know, make some money or something, but didn't seem to make sense. It was nice. This land on the side of the road here, semi near the farm, was owned. So the potato processing and things like that for the Platinum expansion, I used that there because it happened to be flat. And we've also got this piece of land here, which is basically a vacant piece of property, so that if we need to add any further productions that we can't buy that are on the map and so forth, that's our starting point. Next would be down here is a nice big empty space. Again, it's a little ways away though, so it's less convenient. So at this point, I'm not going to go ahead and invest in that land, but you can see there's some other equipment around. This is our equipment. So why it's spread around, I don't know. Maybe he was contracting, maybe he was helping. Why there's a pressure washer in the bunker, I'm not sure, but there is. So these, this wheel loader and this tractor is ours. This is our biggest tractor, this class 570. So I may or may not be moving that up to the farm. This forestry equipment thing is here. Kind of gave me the shakes a little bit, but you know, who knows what we'll need to get into to get some wood. So we'll see. And you know, but this isn't anything we own as far as this land. So you'll see I'm here. If I do what we own, we don't own this, just our equipment is sitting over here. So if we need it in the future, we'll buy it. This is where the nursery and the plants are. So again, depending on what people want, this is something we may look at. And up here is this production of compost and fertilizer, which again may be something that VIPs ask for, because when a production like that is on the map, the VIP order manager is slick enough to be able to work with it. And then over here, this is what would Italy be without grapes and olives, right? So again, we don't own this space right now, but we own all this equipment. So the grape fertilizer and the pruner are ours, the mulcher, subsoiler, the small trailer, the Landini tractor. This is all our equipment, as well as these two harvesters. Now again, your reaction might be, why do we have two harvesters? Like, this is supposed to be small, and not, you know, and also you're probably starting to understand why I paid $3 million for the farm, because there's a lot of semi-expensive equipment here. We have red grapes and white grapes, so we have to use a different harvester for each one, because that's kind of how it's set up. So the yellow harvester that looks closer, I guess, to white grapes is the white grape harvester. The other Broud is the standard grape harvester. And then we've got a little forklift. And then, wow, an older Burr 6105 tractor and another trailer here. And then again, we don't own this, but I think this is the grape processing unit. We'll take a look here. Yep, grape juice production. And again, that is one of the facilities that does things a little bit differently. I know nothing about grapes. I know nothing about grape production, but it produces a byproduct called pomace. Pomace? I don't know how you'd say it, but that is something that sometimes the VIPs look at, or that we can use for compost. So you can see here, white grapes, and you know, if we go down here, you can see them. They're not purple. They're kind of the greenish grapes, where I think over here we've got the regular grapes. Well, it says grapes, but they do seem not to be purple, but maybe because they're not ripe yet. These are all growing too, so again, once we need something, we'll go ahead and purchase things, but that's the benefit of moving on to this map, is there's just a lot of possibility here. I am certainly excited about it. I hope you are as well. Okay, so the last couple pieces that I just wanted to mention, I think there are some pallets we can use here. Oh yeah, and there's some, a bale spike, I think. There's a few pieces of equipment the farmer told me were here. Nice little control. I don't know, can we do anything with it? Oh yeah, we can turn on the shed lights. Look at that. So that could be fun. We'll worry about that in the evening. We'll see, maybe it will help. But, we've got manure and herbicide, which we won't need. So maybe we'll sell that eventually. We got some seeds to start with, but again, the buying station, we've got some lime, some fertilizer. So looks like they weren't quite operating anything that quickly. And then, there's our nice little well, which we're going to need to use to get water to folks. But the last couple pieces I did want to mention as far as changes to the mod. By default, I think it's 20% of things can be non-crop or more production controlled. They're called is limited in the mod. I took that up to 40%, which seemed a little bit more realistic, because then that will help with the Platinum expansion products and stuff being asked for eventually and so forth. And I also took the requirement for things to be able to be supplied basically either down to level 1. Everything can happen at level 2 and above. So there's a few things like milk, because again, I need the cows to have some time to do some stuff if we need that. I left those type of things as level 2, but I think there's 1 or 2 things. And also, again, the productions in general were level 2, so that I can at least see them coming. And then if I need to get wood and I need to buy a production and I need to do whatever, I can do that. So without wasting more time explaining all the logistics, let's just now look at the VIP order manager and see what we need to work on. So wow. As you can see, again, we're only seeing 2 levels. Probably not going to have a full screen too often, but who knows. But this first level, we've already got needs for 5 things. So I'm going to have to think about, do I want to buy some fields right away? Now, I'm not seeing any alfalfa. I'm not needing to do any grass. Because one of the things I debated was just making this an alfalfa field. But again, if we know we're getting 11,000 off this field, this might be only double. The problem is, I think when I look at this, it's telling me it's 13.96 acres, but most of that is the farm. So I don't know exactly how big the field is. The nice thing is we've got fields around. The other thing I could do, I could be a bit strategic and look at what I have and see if I can buy fields with that crop on them. So again, as we talked about, alfalfa, rye, spelt, triticale, meal, which I think is millet, and then white grapes. Those are the new fill types or new crops on the map. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this introductory episode up. I've given you all the information you need, and then we'll jump in earnest. Thanks for taking the time to watch and understand what is happening here and understand the details. But with that, for those who have followed along, I do thank you for taking the time and care enough to understand what's happening here in a little more detail. And I will see you next time.